Welcome to the Nurture Podcast. My name is Iris Sullivan, and I'm here with Ginger Edwards. And we are exploring that edge area between what is and what is possible. How are you
Hmm.
doing this week, Ginger, on this beautiful new moon?
Yes, happy new moon in Taurus. I am doing good. I just want to shout out to Catherine Clare for her beautiful
Ah,
intro and outro music because it's just perfect and I love it. So shout out to her. And let's see, what am I? Well, I'm just going to take that question and turn it into what am I nurturing right now? How I'm doing is
oh,
irrelevant.
yeah,
What
yeah,
am I
yeah, yeah,
nurturing?
yeah.
No,
Nurturing, way better question. Thank you. Thank you for
no, it's just
translating.
I'm just
Thank-
kidding. I'm kidding. Um, Kind of the same anyway.
Mm.
I am nurturing. Well, honestly, I'm nurturing this new project I'm working on, which is to write a marketing guide for people who sell at farmers markets. And because it's the new moon in Taurus, I was very interested, and I've been interviewing women who are like brand new, like they're just gonna like their first time ever taking their thing to a farmer's market. So I've been in these interview process, so it has brought up to mind so many questions because what they tend to fumble around with the most is like I don't want to sound salesy, I don't want
Yes.
to be pushy, I just make my beautiful thing and I just want to sit there and have people like hopefully kind of come over to me and figure it out. And so as a small business coach, I'm like, okay, well that's a kind of a problem. Like we need to be able to talk about how like what the value of what we're doing is with other people. And
Yes.
so then this brought to whole mind of like, how do we value our work? How do we talk about the value of our work? Why is it so hard to talk about value and what our value is and what we do is whether it's valuable or not? So that is the question I offer to you as a topic tonight. And also I will ask you on the side, because what are you thinking about? What are you nurturing?
So yesterday, um, I had like all these insights and had some great conversations over the weekend with my sweetie pie and I was like, oh, I can't wait to talk to Ginger about that. But I'm just realizing right now I can't remember one thing that was from that. And I think it's because today was a really productive day on on working on Indigo Fest, which is the big project, one of my annual big projects that I do with Brit Bowles. Um, and this year we kind of made an audacious decision to try to buy out the facility that's hosting it and all the lodging there, which means, we have to sell more tickets and figuring out how to make it even more fabulous, which I think having the whole campus will make it all more fabulous. And we're bringing art into it this year.
Mm.
And doing, so call for, if anybody is listening to this and wants to make an Indigo postcard, drop me a line. I'd love to have it. Um,
I love how you sang that part.
there's a lot of sing.
God.
There's a lot of singing at Indigo Fest, I think. I think I just sing a lot more than maybe some people do. Maybe it's because I spend so much time by myself. I don't know, but I sing a lot. Even though,
Well,
but
what I want to catch there, which was interesting, is that you were making a request, right? And how
ah,
your tone actually changed when you're like, if anybody wants to do this thing, and it kind of goes back to this idea of how we sell, right?
ah, ah, ah.
How we ask. And so I don't know that that was one way or the other, but I'm interested in just catching that for you and just asking you about it. Like, why do you think your tone just went sing-songy when it was an ask?
I do have an answer to this one
Okay.
because I was just I was uh listening to someone who's talking about like challenging childhood residuals that I really like to listen to. And that person was talking about how this is a problematic thing of expecting the other person to put you in the same box that you came in.
Mm.
And so like if you're he didn't phrase it like this. I'm paraphrasing in my own Irish speak, but like
Mhm.
so when you expect someone else to, if you like try to make it small, that's like being ready for for them to be very mean or negative, and that's actually putting kind of a weird geese upon all of your communications. And
Mhm.
I was realizing because I'm also facilitating this big art project in November, and I just over the weekend I had Zoom calls with all of the artists who are involved with that. And I'm actually, it's kind of an amazing thing that like it's a big offer to invite artists, like as an artist, to be invited to participate in something like what this is. It's great, right? But I was realizing the difference between this event, doing it this time, than 2 years ago. And there's a lot of overlap. And I way overgave in
Mm.
that other art thing that I curated, because I somehow was in my head was expecting that they were going to need a lot of perks in order to be interested. They were going to need a lot. They were going to need me to really perform in order for it to be worthwhile. When
Mhm.
in fact, it's like that's not how it is at all. And so I've been doing a lot of work getting ready to interact with the artists this round,
Mhm.
to not over, like not try to, like,
Mm.
consciously to turn that down.
Yeah.
So
Hold
back
on,
to
let me
what
catch that. What is the work you're doing? When you said I've been doing
for
a lot
the
of work to not do that again, like what does that actually look like for you?
I think that it's I I think what it is that in my household we've been I've asked like a couple of my close people to try to help me catch it
Mm.
when I do that. And I've been writing about it
Mhm.
because I was really noticing this year. Like I'm like, wow, like I overcompensate because I have this negative expectation, which is
Mhm.
really, why am I putting that on people? And
Mhm.
you've helped me with this a few times too, but like, so I've been writing about it a lot,
Mhm.
um, and journaling about it. And so I think and just trying to like observe. And then when I'm getting ready to interact, or if I'm writing a correspondence, before I push send, looking at it and saying, okay, like, is this, is everything I say here a hell yeah, and
Mm.
no strings attached? It's
Mhm.
so like trying to like check myself, which
Yeah.
I'm absolutely not successful at that 100% of the time. Even, like but that's kind of not the goal. The goal is to celebrate each time I do catch
Yeah, good catch. Exactly. Like the goal is never to be 100% successful because we're never going to be that. So,
Right, right.
yeah. But yeah, going back to the sing-songy. So with all
Yes.
that backdrop, what do you think that was?
I think that was me feeling a little bit embarrassed to be asking people I don't know to do something.
Okay, I was wondering. I couldn't tell if it was excitement or if it was a little embarrassment.
I think it's a little bit embarrassed, even though
Okay.
I'm actually super excited by that
I
that
know.
art show.
So interesting. So this is actually the perfect segue into this entire conversation because one of the things you just said was really key for I think why it's hard for us as well just as people but also as women specifically to like sell what we do, especially if it's our art or our emotional labor or our intellectual properties, our ideas, I mean, I think it's because we have to understand and relate it back to how devalued that is as a commodity in the
Hmm.
culture we're raised in. And you it can't take it out of that context because it really needs that. You really to sit with that to understand how powerful that is, how unpaid that has been. Like all women's emotional labor and even intellectual work and physical work. like just not paid at all, very devalued. And so
Yes.
when you get into realms where you're like, I'm actually a professional artist and I'm hosting my own show, like you're breaking so many norms there of just in the patriarchy, in the conventional culture, showing up as that at all. And
Right.
then to then go beyond that and be like, and I have this idea that I want all this community participation. I mean, like you're clearing lots of hurdles from the culture that you're in. So
Yes.
I want to offer that, like for anybody who is, you know, feeling that like, I should be giving this away for free, or it should be, cheap, or I need to be doing this as a service. And you hear that a lot. Like people, I can't believe you're asking that. You know what I mean? Like the pricing is always in people's minds. Like,
Yes.
I think it is an echo of being in a culture where it's an expectation that we do this stuff for free.
And I think that, okay, so I think that it goes further back to like our body, because kind of, I think that in an intact, healthy society where that all of that kin work and emotional labor is valued for what it brings to our lives,
Hmm.
that people that provided an extra skill above and beyond would have been taken care of. So like,
Mm,
if somebody was really a good musician and everyone really wanted them to lead the rest of the village in song, they probably would have been like gifted a little extra firewood and various things. Or if somebody was delivering babies, other people would have stepped up to watch their children, and
yeah.
people would have made sure that they had enough to eat. So like, I think that we do have a body memory of that ancestral thing of where we were in this together and people were taking
Mm,
care of each other. And then when you had creative downloads, it was, of course, there was no barrier,
mm,
because following that creative muse would not mean that you're choosing between buying groceries and doing that.
yes.
And since the creative process has been commodified
Mhm.
and
And
used against,
devalued.
devalued,
Mhm.
it's only part of it's devalued. You
Right.
devalue the parts that are dangerous to the status
Mm,
quo, which is the ones that people are trying to connect people to their emotions and to
mm,
their own truth. So that's very dangerous if you're trying to control people. So
mhm,
at the same time, I mean, like, think about all that Renaissance art that was all funded by the church.
mm,
So, like, what arts were being replaced? What, like, if the only music that has a place in society is music that was for the church, that's like, if you have
mhm,
control over the creative process, which, if you look around, who's being paid to be creative?
mm,
People that are in graphic design for advertising, people that are making film, which
mhm,
is propaganda.
mhm,
All films are propaganda, pretty much. Like,
mm,
if they have any funding, they're supporting the dominant culture.
mm, mhm.
Anyway, sorry, that's a big rant. Artist rant.
No,
Stop.
it's valid. It's valuable.
Right. But so I think it's both. I think we both are trying to do something that's being discouraged
Mhm,
because it's dangerous.
mhm.
It's like, I
Yeah.
think, and at the same time, if I think we're all creative.
Yes, I totally understand what you're saying, and, like, it goes back to I think we keep circling back to that idea of primary satisfactions that Francis Weller elucidates really good in his
Yes.
work and his grief work, but I think when we talk about nurture culture, it is a key part of it. Like, we do have some fundamental parts of being human that nurture us. Our creativity and our expression are absolutely one of them, and, like, you're right
Yes.
that there is this natural desire to share your downloads, your creativity, who you are, like what brings you joy, your art, your music, your ideas, like all of that. And we live in this really weird system where there is a value commodity placed on things, right? And
Yes.
like so
Yes.
you're always being in this hierarchy of like what's more valuable. And it just so happens that for women especially, our work, in that realm. And I would say, yeah, for anybody who's not like a white male, you know,
Yeah.
Christian, there's like a whole, there's a norm, a standard, right? Like you just mentioned, like there's like a value placed highest on certain things, and other things are just kind of less valuable, less paid. Farming's another one. It's just,
Yeah.
as things became more industrial, like that is not something you get paid a lot to do, even though it's very valuable and needed. It's not like it's what it's worth. It's what it's valued at. And I,
Yes, yes, yes.
yeah, and so it's a weird translation to try to like think about how to shift into nurture culture. This is an interesting conversation to have with yourself, with your own art, but also like, yeah, out in the world too. When you start to sell, this comes at you like a Mack truck. Like, oh my God, like what? How do I do this?
And
What is?
how do you find that, how do you find that shared understanding of what you're
Yeah.
doing
Yep.
when you are interfacing with people that are completely disconnected to whatever your process is? So if someone has
Mhm.
never grown food before and they're
Right.
going to the farmer's market and they're in front of this booth for a farmer that's doing everything by hand, and they're thinking, $5 for that? What?
Mhm.
And it's like, well, probably they should be $45
Yeah.
for,
Yeah.
like, like the if you look at what
Yeah.
artisans are generally speaking living very, very modestly. So like it's exactly what you're saying. It's not, it's like the worth of what they are providing to the community.
Yeah.
It's really hard to figure out, to get what do you call that, like the the common kind of like a unified understanding of what the value is, when
Yes.
they're, like, who's setting the value? The value is being set by people, by the corporations who have, so there's,
Well, that's interesting because yes and no, because there are like, you're right that there has to be a shared understanding of the value, right? Like there, and your customer or your person, right? The person
yeah,
who's going to be supporting you needs to be on the same page with you on that. Like needs to understand, like, and is with you on that value system. And when you find those people, there's no problem. Like it's easy to
correct, yeah, yeah, yeah,
communicate.
yes, yes,
Like there's
yes,
no when you find the people, and I would say, like having sold at many farmers markets, the people that are already going to the farmers market have self-selected to some extent that
correct,
they're
yeah.
valuing the experience of being directly in front of the creator, and that's something they're valuing just in itself. And I think that beyond that, like as a grower or something, like yeah, you like what I was gonna little side note. I remember bitching about this to someone in my community, older guy, and I was like, I don't make any money as farmer. And he was like, you could have been a lawyer. Like you're a smart woman. And I was like, oh damn. Like he called me out. So and I had to stop and be like, you know what? You're right. Like I
Right,
chose this. Like
right,
I also placed value on this act, like, of being the farmer,
yes,
knowing
yes,
in many respects that I wasn't gonna get the value I was going for was not in cash. Like, if I
yes,
was
yes,
valuing
yes.
cash money, I could have done other things I know make more money than what I am choosing to do. I'm choosing to, like, break my back growing broccoli and selling it for, like, $3 a pound. Like, I am
Yes.
well aware that that's not the path to, like, riches. That is the path to something else.
Which
So you
oh, keep
gotta
going.
own that. Like you own your choices. Like you own that, you
Yes.
are choosing the value of connection to the earth. I mean, I was getting a lot of self-worth out of it, a lot of grounding, a lot of just challenging myself, learning the lifestyle I wanted. All of it. I didn't have to put on a suit and go to a corporate job and deal with the bullshit. Like I didn't want to do any of that. I wanted to do this. And now you can argue like, yeah, but that should be paid as well as a lawyer. Okay, but like again,
I think that the more interesting thing about what you just said
mm,
is that you are really naming the reality, which
mhm,
is are multiple currencies
yeah,
coexisting within our life.
yes,
So, and the international banking currency system is just one, and it's
Yeah.
super domineering, but there's the gift economy, there's kinship, the economy of kinship ties, where it's
Mhm.
like, you can call on ex friend or ex relative to help you move,
Mhm.
like we've all got, and I think that and those are that economy is what helps people live longer and be happier, and like that's actually the most important economic system in our life, is
I
that
would agree.
invisible kinship
Yeah.
economy.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's also very devalued.
Right.
Like, it's not something that, people don't talk about like, "Ooh, when I'm really successful, I'm gonna have this community, you know, of people that can help me fix my lawnmower." It's not, because I just had some of my neighbors come over and help me take my lawnmower deck off today, and I was like, "Yes," like, that is very valuable. Like, I needed someone to show me how to do that. And he did it for free, and he looked around the barn, and he was like, "Hey, can I put some stuff in here as storage for the winter?" I was like, "You better believe you can, because I've got a big old barn and you know how to deal with lawnmowers." Like, that's a really good exchange for both of us. And I
Yes.
was just like, that is so valuable for both of us, because he doesn't have access to storage. I don't have access to that skill. And yet it's cashless. Do you see that? Like, that's why
Yes.
capitalism, that is not, they don't put a lot of emphasis on things that aren't about production, consumption, and money exchange. But you're right. Like, just the ability to have somebody, that you can do those kind of trades with is huge.
I mean, talking to Ed and Edna, who are like these mythical figures I'll refer to often, who are some really important people in my upbringing growing up, and they've both passed away now. But talking to them about the 1930s,
Mm,
and being being an adult during the Depression, and what that experience was like for them. The thing that was really notable that I remember Ed saying was that he's like, the thing is that we were all poor. And this was in Michigan. They weren't experiencing the Dust Bowl,
mhm,
and they were mostly people on 40 and 80-acre farms
mhm.
with a lot of woods still. So, they poached, they ate deer mostly, not everybody, but most people mostly ate deer for their meat. Um, but he's like, money and using money was what, nobody ever had any money. Like, but they were like, but they were rich, and they were eating, they had a roof over their heads, they were, like there was some money in the economy,
Mhm,
but it was money was used for a very small proportion
mhm.
of getting their needs met.
Yeah.
And so it's brilliant. I mean, isn't that what all marketing is about? Is like identify a need and convince them that you're the answer, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no, I would say. But I think that is a very capitalistic way of looking at marketing, for sure. I'm actually writing a marketing course right now, so I'm gonna catch that one and just be like,
Nice,
yes,
nice, nice.
that is like the dominant bro speak of like, find the pain point, provide the solution. And I think that's what we're here to talk about, because that has been like the push out there, like that's why I think people feel icky selling
Yes,
their stuff,
yes.
because you're looking at your customer like a vending machine. Like, I just have to, how do I extract money from you? Like, you're walking by, like, and I'm like, what button do I have to push to get the money out? That is a horrible way to look at other humans. And of course, you don't want to be like, as someone who's farming or making art, like, that is not your instinct, right? So you enter a capitalist system that teaches you like that's how you sell, and if, yeah, it doesn't feel good. And so then people just like basically sit there and they don't sell. They feel icky about it, so they don't do it, and they lose what is inherently, like we're just talking about. They lose the actual relationship building part,
Yes, which is the
because
best part about doing farmers
that is
markets.
the best part about doing it. That's why people are there. You can go to Costco and buy all that stuff way cheaper. And I mean, absolutely you can. Not the same quality, but it's easier you can even go to like New Seasons or the co-op and like pretty much get the same products from the same farms if you really look. And and probably be way more convenient for your day. However, you're going there for relationship. It's just what we're
Yes,
talking about.
yes,
Like
yes.
people have, it's the inherent like primal satisfaction of this really old feeling of walking through the village square and being like the baker, the carrots, like this is something deep within us that feels really right and good. And if you travel to other countries, almost every country in the world, right, you have this village experience of a marketplace where you can go and like see all the farmers, and it's part of being human.
Yes, for a really, really long time.
A really long time, as long as we've
Like,
been doing stuff and exchanging goods. I mean, this has been, so I just wanted to catch that because that is, you actually pulled out two things that I'm working on, is the thoughts that we have about the people who buy from us, like who
mhm.
we think of them as either like vending machines, like we're taught to in capitalism. How do we extract the gumball that we want, which is coins, or we think about them as kind of hostile to us, like
Yes, yes.
I'm like they're like try to convince me to buy the carrot very
Right.
often, and so we're like, I don't know if I want to interrupt their day, if I don't want to say anything, I'm being pushy, I'm being salesy, like they don't really want my thing, when instead of thinking like, yeah, people want to make the art postcard, like you're not asking them to do something they don't want to do, like they're
I made you
there.
do one. You
Yeah,
liked
I
it.
loved it. It was super fun, by the way, everybody. Do a postcard. But like it it is it's a weird thought that we have, that it's this
Yes.
antagonistic relationship, that inherently we are thinking they don't value what we do. And so we're gonna have to be convincing them or like getting them on board or somehow manipulating them. And I want to just really reposition that as like, these are, I think most of the people who buy and support and get our coaching or come to our art shows or whatever it is you're doing really want connection. Like they're
Yes.
showing up because something about what you're doing is inspiring them. Like
Yes.
either you're a role model for them, they want to do it, or they just want to connect with it. They really, the world feels safer because they see you doing it, like you're a little piece of humanity that feels corely like right to them. And so they want to be there to support you. You're not forcing them to do anything, like, and
I,
but we hold back on the connection part because we are afraid that somehow that's what they're thinking it's like, yeah, we're not manipulating them unless we in
unless we are,
ourselves, we
right.
don't know, we actually are unclear about what we are trying to do, like we are devaluing our offer internally, therefore we feel like we have to manipulate in order for you to get on board. So that's like an inner process that's coming out, and I think that's going back into like the culture we were raised in, like the culture devalues it, so now we feel like we're devaluing it and we have to somehow,
It's like the reflecting pool for the
yes.
society around us. And yes, yes. Which is interesting because I'm realizing that when I did farmers markets also for a long time, both as an artisan and as a baker, selling pastries and bread. And like, the best advice I ever got was Margaret Thierry, who's another fiber artist, she knit hats primarily. She just made hats for years. And I was sitting in the back of my booth trying to be unobtrusive. And it's like, somebody comes into your booth, it's a very small space. So it's not
Yeah.
like so if you're just making yourself small, it just is kind of creepy and weird and uncomfortable. It's not. And she's like, you get up, stand up at the front of your
Mm-hmm.
booth and talk to people. She's like, don't,
Mm-hmm.
and she's like, the ones that are, they're either going to buy or they're not. And that has
Mm-hmm.
almost nothing to do with what you do.
Yep.
But that she's like, think of it as performance art. You are
Mm.
providing the theater. They are here for the theater experience as much as anything
Mm.
else. And then, and it's like, and it totally made it 100 times more fun for
Mhm.
me.
Mhm.
And it was very different being in a baking booth because often, in my experience, being in the bakery booth at various farmers markets is people are really into sugar. So you're just like trying to do the math. There's
Yeah,
not,
right.
there's like, you have
Yeah,
three people
carbs
deep.
sell themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Like that. Your job is just to count. And so
You know the need they're meeting. Like they're just
you're,
like, we need this.
I
Like you
want,
don't have to
yeah, like
translate that. Yeah.
give me that Carmen roll. It's well
Mhm.
different than trying to
It is
like,
different. Yeah.
that just sell some other things I've sold. but anyway, so I was thinking about, and it's interesting. I'm loving this conversation because I'm realizing, why was I able to get super comfortable and figuring out pricing on what it really needed to cost as a baker? But what's holding me back from looking at and selling effectively my like my workshops or whatever? Like, it's like
Mhm.
I can barely drag myself to art openings. I like
Mm,
it's horrible. But the irony is I can count on one hand in the, how old am I? 30 years that I've been, going to various like art openings or whatever, or open studios. I can count on one hand the number of unpleasant people that were like, you know
mhm.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And there are hundreds and hundreds of wonderful people that I got to interact with.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, which is exactly what you're saying. So that
Yeah.
was,
No, I agree. And I think I mean, I think of it, you said performance art, which is interesting because I don't think of it as performance art. I think of it as relationship building. It's almost
mm.
like the better analogy for me is like dating, like at a
Ah.
bar. Like, and you've got you show up and you've got all these people and you're kind of like looking around like, oh, maybe somebody's interesting to me. Maybe they're interested in me. And it would be weird for you to sit in the back of the bar and just be like, I don't know, I'm just gonna take up as little room as possible. And like maybe somebody will come over to my table and like look at me real hard and be like, what are you about? Like, and then I'm like, oh, I'm kind of like this. And I'm not going to push on it. I just think about that. It's a completely unsuccessful strategy if you were trying to like actually find a connection with people. No, like what you would be doing is like checking people out, making conversation, hopefully,
Yeah.
and and if someone seems like they like you and you like them, you'd be like, hey, let me get your number. Like, let me talk to
Yeah,
you. Let
go
me
for a hike, or you want
yeah,
to
let's like
go.
take this a little further. And that is exactly like what I feel is the most beneficial way to show up at a market or anywhere you're selling. Like you're just showing up as yourself. Like you got your
Yeah.
stuff. And if people are interested in you, which trust me, the value that you're bringing if you're like a solopreneur or an artist or even a baker or a farmer, I mean, they're interested in you. I mean, yeah, sure, the cardamom roll, the beautiful bunch of carrots, of course. But again, they could buy that other places. Trust
Right.
and believe they can go get that somewhere else. They're interested in your story, who you are. Like they want relationship. Absolutely. This is about nurture culture. This is how we
Yes,
build nurture
yes,
culture.
yes, yes, yes.
And
It's
if we
what nurture
keep
culture
showing
is.
up with our goods in this weird capitalistic stance and devalue ourselves and then devalue them as like projecting onto them like they don't really understand us or they don't like us or it's a lot of people show up at farmers markets and they just are like yeah they sit there behind their booths make themselves very small and then they get mad at the market like oh well they let somebody else in that kind of sells the same thing I do so I would have done better they make a big story and excuse about why they didn't do well instead of just being like it's my job like no one's it's not the bar's fault that you didn't go out and talk to anybody, you know what I mean?
Right,
Like, you
right.
don't blame the bar for you not meeting someone. Like, this just a venue, that you get to come and hang out in, lots of people like to go to. It's up to you to like talk to people and get it out there and build the relationships. And yeah, there's some and but I also just like as I said at the top, like there's some hurdles there that we have to look at as a culture, like trying to understand that this stuff has been devalued. So we have to kind of work through our own stuff around my things are valuable. I'm valuable. What I bring to the table, literally to the table in front of you, is valuable. And the person walking towards me, that wouldn't be walking towards me if they weren't like 90% there. Like they're
Right.
interested. They're coming at the bar, like they coming to buy you a drink, or they're walking towards you, like you got them. All you have to do is just relate.
So this is really interesting because what we've been talking about are these precious person to person and physical proximity
Yeah,
relationships.
so precious.
And so like, and that's like such a yeah, like and so thinking about how things translate to the digital world is
Mm.
interesting to me because it's
Mhm.
like, I think that there are ways that we can interact in that way. Like, this is kind of amazing that I get to talk to you every week.
I
It's so
know, it's
great.
so cool.
Like,
Yep.
it's totally cool. And at the same time, it's like I find myself with these absurd thoughts, like if I'm interacting with the algorithm, like,
Mm.
oh, only 300 people looked at my post. And but it's like, what if I went out in front of my house and
It's a lot of people.
300 people showed up in the street and
Right.
I just stood on my front porch and said, hello, neighbors, let me tell you about this
This is my
bone.
cat. Yeah.
This is my cat. I call her Studio Cat. She is,
And
and
300 people applauded, yes.
and the 300 people said, yeah, it's great. I mean, one, I'd be super freaked out, but
Yeah.
also like, that's so, so like even if it's only 150 people or whatever
It's a
see
lot.
something, it's
Yeah.
actually, yeah. So if I have like 10 people that give it a little heart or whatever that said,
Yeah.
yeah, I love this. I mean, if I want, yeah, like just think if you went into the co-op and there were 30 people in the grocery store and five of them came up to you and said, that's great. I love what you're doing.
Incredible.
It'd be like
Incredible.
such a
Yeah.
crazy,
Life-changing. Yes.
life-changing event.
Yeah. And I mean, I think of it's such a great analogy again, because you're putting it in human scale. Like if you think of the farmer's market like a bar, kind of like there's that many people there or whatever. And if you think of social media, now I always think of it as an amphitheater, like a
Ah,
huge concert amphitheater. And now I'm walking into that and I'm
yes.
like, I have this, cute post or I have this idea. And there is so many things going on in that amphitheater. It is such a big party. There are so many people telling jokes and playing music and baking I mean, like a million things. And if any of them turn towards me and are like, "Oh, that's really cool. Like, tell me more." Like
that
that,
that is kind of astounding.
it's astounding. And it's also really fun to be in this crazy mix of, humanity doing all their things all the time. And it never, by the way, the never ends. It's 24/7, just thousands, millions of people doing the promoting, putting things out there. And and yeah, the fact that we can get upset that there's not like more likes or whatever. It's like really, it's really amazing that, any of that algorithm is like tracking, especially with, I think a lot of our stuff is kind of in the past before we had this. How many people could we find in our town
Yeah, I made a
that
lot of
thought,
flyers.
yeah, that thought the way we did, or that we could find the people who are into astrology like us or into indigo like you are, and living in Michigan without the internet? Like how hard it would be, so hard to find these communities of people,
Yes.
right? Now we have access to all the people on the planet. So if you have a weird niche thing that you like to do and talk about, you've
Oh,
got them.
I
It's
mean,
amazing.
seriously, like, so the project in November is a matter, kind of like matter's the central, which is a dye, it's a plant. And I reached out to some people and like some of them live in different countries and but I know their work because of Instagram, right? And so we over the weekend I had like Zoom calls with like we had to split it into two groups because of time zone stuff. And so I had two different awesome groups. But the thing that was just wild is just like, oh my gosh, like I would never in a million years have met, and I wouldn't have met artists from New
Yeah.
England and New York and Chicago, and I would only have been talking to the people who are local.
Yeah.
And it's like, two-thirds of the people are live thousands of miles away, but they're obsessed with the same stuff that I'm obsessed with.
Yeah.
They're thinking about these same themes and they're super, so yeah, it is kind of it's both a wonder and it's really easy to somehow lose track of that.
Yeah.
And also it's totally not within our control.
Yeah. Yeah. But it also it puts the perspective back, like you said, when you actually have people physically in front of you, how powerful that is. Because
Yes.
I mean, the magic of being able to reach all these people and collaborate with these artists across the world, that's incredible. That's a unique experience that's happening now. Like that wasn't
Right. In this
available to people
time.
before. Yeah,
Yes.
we are on planet Earth experiencing that like nobody else, no generation has ever done with ease, like the way we can right now. That's very, very powerful. And I'm going to say, even more as we go in that direction, it is even more powerful to have the people who are right in front of you at a farmer's market or an art gallery show
Yes.
or a coaching session who show up in person or one-on-one, because that's a gift
Yes.
when your attention is to be drawn in a million different directions. To have the gift of relationship, the one-on-one guy you could call to fix your lawnmower, or you know what I mean? Like those
Yes.
are even more like powerful, and to value them both. Like we,
Yes.
and the one does not detract from the other. One builds into the next maybe, but that we have all these different ways we can communicate and grow community now, which we, didn't really have before. And sell and make money and all of it.
Right.
I mean that,
Yes.
and I really, and the last thing I wanted to say is that I don't think it's a bad thing to say you're trying to make money. That's what you're doing. Like there's a piece of what, we start businesses to make money. Like it's okay. Like,
Right.
and I think that that's also like, cause kind of in the mix there of like how people are like, oh, I'm doing it to make the world a better place or to share my blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Okay. But there's, at the bottom line is it's totally fine. There's no shame in saying it. I'm doing it for self gratification, or because I love it, right? Like
Yes.
I enjoy this. This is for me, and it's for money. Like those two things. Be transparent about that. Own it. There's no shame in that, and when you own that, it like can unlock the joy of all the other things that come with that connection. That like, yeah, I'm here to do what I want to do, to pay for my vacation. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
there's a
totally.
lifestyle I want. I don't want to just, I want to dress the way I want. I want to, you know, be able to ride my bike at 3 o'clock in the afternoon if I feel like it. I don't want to work in an office, so I'm doing this to fund my lifestyle, to create a culture that doesn't look like the thing that I
Yes.
don't value.
Yes.
That's okay. Like it's okay to want money to do that. And I think that you don't, I mean, if you're kind of like, I have to put it back in that realm of I'm just being this beneficent being because that's where the goodness is. The goodness is
I
in the
it
unpaid, because look at just
right.
watch that value system, right? Like, but really what we were trying to project is, well, I'm doing farming because, I want what's good for the earth and I want to grow community, and that's all good. It might all be in there. And you need to make money and, you like the lifestyle. It's a choice you're making for you. And it's okay. There's like, I hear that coming into a lot of people, like that it stops them because they feel like they always have to go back to explaining like
Yes. Yes.
why
Well,
money's
and
not important.
which I think is super, super interesting. I'm hearing you articulate this and going like ding, 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 like two things, like realizing that like early on, like when I was 18, I took a class on the religions of East Asia, and so it had this whole section on Buddhism in there, and it was mind blowing for this Catholic Midwesterner girl, and it was so great. But one of the things that he was talking about was right livelihood,
Mhm.
and it was like, oh my God, that's so. And of course, it was perfect because I grew up in a household where my father's profession had been his calling, right? He was called to do that work, and he felt, and it was like a spiritual imperative to become a physician.
Mhm.
And so like it wasn't an unfamiliar, it fit very well with where I had come from.
Mhm.
But I was like, oh, I am so committed to right livelihood. Want to I want the work that supports me to be work that I support.
Mhm.
And so I kind of made that choice as an 18-year-old, which was in retrospect, I'm like, wow, that was like really radical. Because so it's like when I look at my work history, I've never really had I've never had, literally have not had the experience of I hate my job. I've just never had that experience. And I don't know if I think it's because I'm super lucky, or because I've been really picky, or because I've been willing to work and not live on very little at times. But like, exactly. So it's like this idea that of course you're doing the job to have money. And if the only reason that you're doing the job because of the money, that it's pretty much, I haven't seen that work out for happiness for the
Mhm.
people I know that have felt trapped by their work. they're not happy, even if they
Mhm.
make way more money than I make. Like it's not, it doesn't, and so it's like it's both and like
Mhm.
we absolutely need to we have to, we live in this economy, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So we need to be able to interact with money,
Mhm.
and it's energy, right? It's like, even, it's just energy.
Yeah.
So, and if we can do so in a way that we also benefit in those other ways, emotionally, spiritually, fun, or whatever,
That's the
that's
goal.
that's the
Yeah.
goal. Sorry, it was
Absolutely. No, that's exactly, you said it perfectly. That's exactly the goal. And I think what I did for a long time, I mean, I've been self-employed since I was 19. So I have been creating my own jobs for myself with this kind of idea that I do what I want to do. And
Yeah.
I learned so much. I mean, it's such a school, like when you're about who you are, because your businesses are right in your face of like, you're
Yes.
projecting all your stuff into your businesses. That don't fool yourself by thinking you're not. It's all, this is like, if your emotional stuff comes up in intimate relationships, your business is one of the most intimate relationships you'll ever
Yes.
have. And so
Yes.
all of your stuff is going to show up. And which is why I'm talking, why it's so interesting to talk about it when you get to these places where people are going to a market for the first time. And it's like they're wrangling with way more than even the cultural assumptions. They're wrangling with their own stuff. Like you said, your own
Yes.
shame, your own, thoughts about money and value and, why am I doing this? And I was an activist. So I was always like, everything I do has to be about making the world a better place. Everything I'm doing has to be about the community. And it's really recently, I'm going to say like maybe this year that I've been like, it's fucking for me. Oh, sorry about swearing there. It's for me. And that's an honesty level I don't think I've had before. Like I said, that question that the older gentleman gave me, that was one of those check marks where I'm like, he's like, You're doing this because you wanted to, right? Like you could have made other choices." And it was such a good way to call me out because I was like, "Oh, right, like
Yes.
yeah, it is for me." And now I'm like, "Of course it's for me. This
Yes.
is my." These are all been my choices. It's what I wanted to do.
Yes.
It's what I wanted to learn. It's what I was interested in. And guess what, y'all? The more you value you and what you want and center that, the more value you create for your community because you have to trust that you are valuable. Like what you bring, what your interests are, like what fascinates you. Trust me, you're not alone. Like, and you, as you bring that up, you are gonna meet people who are like, yeah, that's also super interested in that. I also think that's valuable, but you might be the one who unearths it, or who brings it to the surface, let people engage with it. It's really cool when you can just own that. Guess what? Like you can be yourself. It's not a performance. That's what I want to
Right.
like. It's not a performance. It is you and your authentic self. And the more you can just be like, and I want money. Everything about you, like be honest with who you are, what you need, and believe it or not, people will still be interested. Like it's, because you bring value in your inherent self.
Yes.
And that's the level of trust that comes, I think, that, and eventually it will come. And when you can really trust that and lean into it, like as weird as you are, all the weird niche things you're into, the way you talk, your upbringing, like the packages that all came with that, the ways you screw up, the ways you're messy, that's all valuable. It's not the perfect projection of what you think is valuable according to the culture, like, or what you think is going to save the world or make the world a better place. It's not, it's authenticity. And
Yeah.
and because that's where you give people permission to relate
Yes.
to you and relate to themselves in their most authentic way. And that is what I believe AI and those things can never do, because
Right.
there's always this way where they're still working on this projection of perfection and making it better and better and better. Humans are messy.
Yes. Yes.
We form communities around messy, imperfection, and need. This is how we build. This is why we have community and relationships, not because we're all perfectly sitting there with our perfectly packaged selves. That's really inaccessible. It's actually really isolating. And I think one of the fun parts about walking through a farmer's market is to see the guy in the dirty overalls and like, like everybody just shows up and it's like, it's great
Uh,
to have a beautiful booth, but really it's really interesting to just see the producers themselves, you know? And then as a producer, it's such a valuable thing to see your customers like as them, not
yes.
as vending machines, but who are they?
Right.
And the question to ask is like, why are you coming up and talking to me? Like, what interests you about this? Like, why do you like my art? Like, ask them question. Be curious. Like, like, what do you? Yeah, what about this calls to you? That's fascinating. Like I don't know. I know I do it. What are you? Why are you buying the tea? Like, what do you like? How is it helping you? How is it serving you?
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. That's my take on it. I think that we just have to get way more curious, be way more real with why we're there, who we are, and then really curious about who we're meeting in the mix.
It's because it's like to be curious, to be in that. It's interesting. It's the second time today this has come up in conversation that like what a what a life enhancement it is.
Yeah.
More curious because curiosity is a really we're so hardwired for curiosity, right?
Mhm.
Like 3-year-olds, they're really new at talking, they can do sentences, but like just, right? 3-year-olds. What's the number one word? You can spot it across the room, how old they are, because you hear
Mhm.
one word, why?
Mhm.
Why? All small children, why?
Mhm.
But why? And it's like, I just feel like that's such a great, it's like, and we all have that
Yeah.
3-year-old inside of us, but we're told, oh, it's like you see people like how they respond to that when they are around these little feral
Mhm.
creatures. And some people are like, oh, you can't ask that right now. You can't ask that.
Yeah.
Now's not the time to talk. You should be, like, so like as when we were 3-year-olds, how celebrated was that?
Mhm.
So we are, it's like, how can we re re-enfranchise if that part of
Yeah.
us has been disenfranchised? How do we re-enfranchise
Ask
our
questions. Yeah.
natural curiosity, which is
Ask
just
questions. Yeah. Instead of trying to sell, ask. Like, why are you, yeah, I see you looking at that. What interests you about it? Like, why did you come, where are you from? What's going on? Why are you here? Why'd you show up at my art show? I'm so interested, like, and genuinely be interested
yeah.
because we project onto people all the time. And rarely do we actually like listen to why they're there, why they showed up, why they're buying the thing. But they're giving you really valuable information, by the way, like as the creator, like, because
Yeah.
you might have no idea why they're buying it, like why they think it's valuable. It might be the furthest thing from your mind. You might be really, really surprised by why they think that's cool. And it'll ignite a whole nother level in you of like purpose and service. I mean, it is such a win-win to get into those conversations of real relationship around value, like because why they're valuing it, like even asking your partner, like your actual relationship partner, why they like you, why they're into this, why is interesting, because we have ideas in our head, like we think we know this person, but what we really know is our projection of ourselves that we're putting on that person. Like
Yes.
that's what we're really relating to, people. Always we're in relationships with ourselves as we project onto somebody else. We do that, but really getting curious as to like, why do you feel that way? Like what's, you get like the real person coming through, and it can be really different than when you thought it was. And that can be very healing because
Yeah.
honestly, they can have a much more like positive, um, interested, like healed perspective to give you as the artist, like about why this is engaging them that you never even considered. Like that's the cool part of being a writer or an artist or a coach or a farmer or anything. Like you're putting out this stuff and you don't, and then you get to hear back like, oh, interesting. That's why farmers
It's
markets and gallery shows are really valuable, right? Because we get to show up and listen. But if we're showing up as a show to perform and hope that everybody sees, and everybody.
I think what she was
No, I get
saying
it. I
of that,
totally
that it was
understand.
like that it's a game.
Yeah.
We're engaging in a game,
Yeah.
not that
Yeah.
you're like putting on the
Yeah, yeah. Get up there and
front.
flirt. Yeah, you flirt,
Yes,
like for
yes.
sure, like engage.
It's
Absolutely.
yeah,
But
like
I do think that the performance is why people get exhausted. Like because
yes,
they are like trying
yes,
to show up as this version they think the community wants them to be.
yes,
And that
which is a
exhausts
form of
people.
it's like a form of masking.
It's
I
exhausting.
think it's a totally
Yeah.
exhausting.
So if you're, I mean, yeah, engaging in any way is like tiring. So it's totally legitimate to be tired. But I'm just saying, like, it is one of the things the fewest things I see people do is actually asking questions like about, about why people want, and and that's everything. And so when you really get into it, valuing yourself enough to be real and authentic and to put your real self out there, and then valuing your customers and your clients and your people enough to like really ask and understand why they're showing up.
Nice.
And that's, I mean, it's one of the core things I think about creating a different culture around this stuff. I mean, to try to understand where our real values are and then lean into them, lean in where what
And
feels good.
and I think that it's pretty much impossible to overestimate the positive impact that ripples out,
Yes.
without even striving for it. It's
Yeah.
like it, what you were saying earlier, it's like it's reassuring for people to see someone doing something that they love. Like it
Absolutely.
energetically to be around somebody who's amplifying love is a
Yes.
wonderful. And so yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
know when I see perfectly put together yoga bodied, in the perfect setting doing things, I actually don't follow them. Like not to say that what they're providing isn't valuable. I just know that something comes up in me that's like, yeah, I can't relate to that. Like it's a daunting. It feels like too high of a bar, and like I have some shame in myself about how I'm not matching that. And so it shuts down connection for me. That's my own stuff. That's not on them. They can,
Yeah.
look however they want. I'm just amplifying that, like, we can value like being imperfect, real, because it is really, I feel like, where we connect from
So
deeper.
this dress that I'm wearing, I don't know, you can't, it's this color grown cotton gingham, organic cotton from Sally Fox. And I have at one point I bought like 250 yards of it from the mill because they had it for super cheap because there was an error, a
Mm.
small threading error, like literally only like 3 inches from the salvage. And this is like 60-inch wide fabric, right? So
Mm.
like so anyway, so they couldn't sell it to the industrial thing.
Right.
But the thing that's super interesting about this idea of a threading error, because like gingham is like dark light. So it's like a little check
Mm.
for people who are just listening to this that don't know that. Weavers in multiple societies that I know of, traditional weavers, there was this idea of intentionally putting a break in the pattern, either to make sure and reassure a jealous God that you weren't trying to recreate perfection and weren't trying to one up them. So there's that perspective.
Mhm.
Or the other thing is that it's a way to let the divine in.
Mm.
If it's too perfect, it's hard for the divine to get into it. So
Oh, I love that.
like both of those stories, right? So
Hmm.
like the idea that a mistake is in the weaving um
Mm.
doesn't invalidate it. It's actually has some divine connection. There's a connection. Those mistakes
Mm.
are kind of almost like evidence of the divine or
Yes.
a reflection of the divine that are
Yes.
in so anyway, so which seemed very pertinent
Yes. And I
to
think it's really, I mean, what that says to me is that we're really, that is the weavers showing their humanity, right? Like
yes,
we are human. We are not divine. We
yes,
we are human, and there's a place an entry point and being human essentially. That is, we're not here to be perfect. We're here to
Right.
be
Yes.
figuring it out, learning, messing up. Like, and I mean, last thing I'll say on this is I just brought into my mind about how much food is thrown away because it's not perfect. Like,
Right.
take it back to the farmer's market. The food waste in this country is insane because things aren't perfect looking. So the value, again, because we lean on this value of perfection, we waste so
Right.
much, like really nourishing, healthy stuff. I mean, I just think it's, again, like it's just a way to reclaim all of that, those parts of ourselves that we're wasting otherwise. It's still really nutrient dense.
Right.
And it
Right.
took a lot of energy to grow, and it can feed so many people. And I just think and that's another value of just like going and buying ugly produce, people. I'm not, that's at a very surface level, but underneath that, like really what that says is valuing all the parts,
Yes.
especially, and maybe even more, the parts that don't look the perfection that the culture is holding up, because it's a very small percentage. And when we focus on that, we waste all of this other stuff that is super valuable to us and everybody in our community.
Oh, this was a great conversation, my darling, my
As
dear.
always, as always. Thank you so much. All right, well, I get that's a perfect place to close. And I value our friendship so much.
Mm.
And I want to say I value everybody listening so much.
Oh, yeah.
And we do this for free because we value our time together, and we value the idea. I think I can speak for both of us on this. We value very much conversations that are about the bigger picture and the culture shift, and not just focus on individual development, like, but really putting it always in that context that the whole culture is shifting as we do this conversation. So we value you for listening, value you. If you want to support our work, we are going to create little promos
Oh.
that we're going to include. And we do actually, we are both artists, and we are both trying to create nurture culture in our own way. So please support us and come to our things and buy art and get coaching and do all the things, because it really does make a difference, that we
Oh,
support each other.
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
Oh my
All right.
gosh.
Love you.
I love you.
Until
Good.
next time.
Okay. Be well.